Football at 4 every day, 4 o'clock. We bring you NFL Eagles coverage powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Adam Caplan from InsideTheBirds.com going to join us here in just a second. We are thrilled to announce the partnership with InsideTheBirds.com powering our Football at 4 segment. You'll hear from Jeff Mosher on Mondays and Wednesdays, Andrew DeCecco on Tuesdays and Fridays, and Adam Caplan every Thursday, only here on the Sports Bash. InsideTheBirds.com powering our Football at 4 as we talk Eagles and NFL all year long. Football at 4. And today we welcome in Adam Caplan from InsideTheBirds.com as part of Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Adam, welcome, man. What's happening?
Mike, good to be with you and Hunter. And
Yeah,
I'll
man.
be with you guys through the end of the Eagles season at a minimum, no matter how long they go. Hopefully for the great fans through the Super Bowl. Remember, you and I were together in Minneapolis in the food court, which is something I'll never forget. Never been through anything like that in my life. Doing Radio Row at the Super Bowl in a food court.
Well, which was better there because at least there was food in the food court, unlike Miami this year.
I'm a vegetarian. I actually ate very well that week. I didn't put any weight on, which was almost a miracle in itself. But look, we're going to be bringing an insider's perspective, Mosher and I, every week in terms of what we're hearing from our team and league sources. Not a lot of speculation. It's strictly going to come from our sources. You know this if you listen to our show Inside the Birds, which you could find on any podcasting platform. You know, when I came up with this concept 2 years ago, I was like, I wanted to do a show with someone who speaks my language, and Mosher does, and we've been doing this now for 2 years. And our traffic has been incredible. We really appreciate the support. We're kind of overwhelmed by it, and we do appreciate all the people that listen and give us feedback. And quite frankly, a lot of the feedback we get shapes our shows every week, so we really do appreciate it.
Yeah, and you can follow them on Twitter at InsideBirds, at Caplan NFL as well. And Adam's going to be with us every Thursday with a lot of insight information. Let's start with some of that stuff, Adam, let's dive right into it, which we're looking forward to this. As you reported earlier in the week that the Eagles are looking at a veteran running back and named names, which is always good, and one of them which was Carlos Hyde, and I think a lot of people think that's a good fit. So is there any new news on when they might push to get somebody in here? Are they going to take their time on that? Is Hyde the guy who would be the top guy on their list?
Yeah, so Mike, one of the great things about doing these segments is I'm able to explain my reporting and what I know from team and league sources. So here's where this thing stands. When the Eagles find a running back that's willing to sign for around the veteran minimum or just above it, that deal will get done. It could happen tomorrow, it could happen in a week, it could happen in 3 months. But once they get that done, and the guy they really like is Carlos Hyde, because they're looking for someone, Mike, who could give Miles Sanders, who's going to be their starter, give him a spell when he needs it. Should he not be able to play 1 week, a running back who could handle volume. They're a team that does throw more in the first half particularly, and then second half when they get a lead, they're going to run the ball just like they did in 17. That's the way that they've outlined it, and they want to run their offense. And to do that, they've got to have someone who can handle carries. And Carlos Hyde they really like. Devontae Freeman, which we'll get to in a second, is also on their list, I'm told. But Hyde's a guy that I'm told they've done their homework on. They like him. Remember, the crazy thing about Carlos Hyde is he's coming off his best season as a pro, his first 1,000-plus yard season. Last season was for the Texans. But the thing you do get concerned with, why has he been on so many teams over the last 4 years? That's the thing I know the Eagles, I'm told, checked into, but they feel comfortable, I'm told, with the information they've gathered.
Yeah, that's interesting because you're right. Hyde over 1,000 yards last year and really had a solid year for Houston, but he has bounced all over the place. And you wonder, at 30 years old, is it one of those things where Houston just said, hey, too much tread? Although they did make the trade for David Johnson, so maybe they felt they needed an upgrade over what Hyde had. Does he bring empty numbers? I don't know. But his role wouldn't seem like he would have this huge role. It would be more of a complimentary or in case Sanders got hurt type of role.
Yeah, so I'm glad you brought that up because it's something I actually did not talk much about on Inside the Birds. We were just kind of putting it out there, what we had heard from sources, but what I could do to expand this. So I think it's going to be whoever they sign, and I'll get to Devontae Freeman now as well, whether it's Freeman or Hyde. Shady McCoy's on their list, but he's further down as I understand it. They want to get that guy in probably anywhere to 5 to 8 carries, depending on what the situation is. And quite frankly, if this team is as good as it was in 17, that guy is going to have some size because that's when they could preserve Miles Sanders in the fourth quarter and give it to that power back like Hyde or Freeman. The issue that Freeman has, Mike, as we transition to him, he has a significant injury history. I mean, the last 3 years he's been hurt a lot. The one thing, though, that the Eagles really do like over Freeman over Hyde, his versatility is way better than Hyde. Hyde earlier in his career was decent catching the football, but Freeman's way better at it. And, you know, with Shady, the issue with him is, I mean, he was inactive for the Super Bowl. You just have to wonder at 32 years old what he has left. And you talk about Carlos Hyde. He does turn 29 in September. Freeman's about a year younger, but Hyde does not, to complete this, he does not have anywhere close to the injury history that Freeman does.
If another team sweeps in and snags Carlos Hyde or Freeman, is there someone between Shady and those two, maybe an undrafted running back? I know you and Moshe have spoke highly of some of these undrafted running backs.
Yeah, I think Hunter, when you really look at their situation at running back, and why I reported they only want to sign a veteran running back to a one-year deal is that they really look at the situation with this behind Sanders as a guy that could grow behind him over the years, and they'd like that to be someone who's younger, like Elijah Holyfield, like Michael Warren, like Adrian Killins Jr., although Killins Jr. can't handle a lot of work. He's very small. But they would like someone who could grow behind Sanders for the future this year because of the pandemic and everything that we're going through. And plus, they need someone who's done it before. They'd like to get that guy, the veteran behind Sanders. And you know what? If a guy in training camp, one of these kids, Warren, Killins, or Holyfield, could show that they deserve to be on the football team, maybe that guy, as Mosher suggests, I thought it was a great point that Jeff made on our show, maybe that guy pushes off Clement. Because, you know, Corey Clement, I remember Jeff and we did our event with Corey, and he was going through exactly what he had to do to make the roster in 17. He beat out 4 players. So I've learned my lesson on that, not to worry about depth charts. It's really about performance, and they really want one of these young kids to shine. And look, the Eagles have done very well with these unheralded players over the years.
Adam Caplan, InsideTheBirds.com, football at 4 here on the Bash. Yeah, I mean, if they end up going to camp with if there is a camp, obviously, with what they have, are they okay with that? If they say, you know what, couldn't find a veteran, couldn't get the right deal done, are they okay with the 4, 5, 6 guys? I mean, I guess some of the undrafted guys might be of interest too, but the 4 guys who were on the roster, Boston Scott, Corey Clement, obviously Miles Sanders, and Elijah Holyfield, are they okay with that?
I would say this, Mike. They could go to camp with it because they've got 6 running backs under contract. But by the time, if the season starts on time, they're going to want to have that veteran behind Sanders. I know Boston Scott was a great story. People try to point out to me, hey, he had a couple games over 10 carries. That's true, but that's not the way the team looks at it. The reason why they're looking for a veteran back is they want someone who can handle volume carries if needed. And the way that we've seen the injury factor at running back over the years, one of the major reasons why the Eagles have not drafted a running back in the first round in really close to 35 years, and Keith Byers, quite frankly, was a fullback, not a running back, it's because of the injury factor. Joe Banner on our show, the former Eagles president, really did a great job of explaining why you don't invest first-round picks in running backs. It's the injury rate, it's the role that they have, and their importance to the football team, especially when you have the mentality in today's NFL, Mike, to throw the football more than you run it. Very few teams are 50-50, as you know. The Vikings and the Seahawks are the 2 teams that are going to be somewhere between 50 and 55%, pass run. But the league average is around 57 to 58% pass. It just you have to, in this day and age, the back has to be able to A, catch the football, and B, be able to handle carries. And right now they just don't have that guy behind Sanders.
We continue to talk about if Sanders gets hurt, but what about when he is healthy? How special can he really be for this offense?
I think that's funny you mentioned him, Hunter. That's actually what Mosher put it in the headline, and he's right. I feel strongly that he's having a breakout season.
Mosher's also a Penn State grad.
Right. Now, and by the way, Mike, I called him out on that. I love to tease him on that, but the one thing that happened last year is I think Sanders probably got a little humble when he got benched against Atlanta because he had the incredible training camp. You could see it. I saw it from being there. I was like, oh boy, they're on, running back's probably the easiest position to scout. It's really easy. Just you watch the guy, your eyes tell you what you need to know, and he looks special. But he just didn't get the job done in week 2. They benched him. that probably helped him just get his mind straight. And then as we went along there, once Jordan Howard got, and I made a joke on our show that why did it take Jordan Howard to get hurt for them to put Sanders back in? But once he went back in, it was just I was like, wow. The Buffalo game, the Minnesota game, Hunter, to answer your question, yeah, he's got a chance to be just as good as Shady, if not better, to answer your question.
Yeah, I do. I joke, but I like Sanders a lot. In fact, he's one of the reasons why I think people might be undervaluing what this team can do, if they are undervaluing. But I guess one question would be is who's the guy that steps in there on a third down and blocks, because we know how important that is for the running back position. And is that a guy that's still not on this roster?
Okay, so if Devontae Freeman absolutely can do it. If Freeman cannot, I mean, if they don't get a deal done with Hyde and they bring Freeman in, Freeman could do it. He's not going to take every third down. I think Sanders will get some of it. Boston Scott will definitely get some of it. If Clement is on the team, he could do a little bit of it, and Freeman could do it. Now, Hyde was a little bit better pass catcher earlier in his career. I remember talking to Hyde when he was with the Niners in 2017. We were talking about Kyle Shanahan's offense and his responsibilities in the pass game, and then it just didn't work out for him there, so he moved on. But I don't see Hyde as a guy who'd play a lot on third down. I think it would be a little bit of Scott, a little bit of Sanders, and maybe a little bit of Clement, but certainly not. They could mix it up, but Freeman's a guy who could definitely do it because he's a little bit better than you think at catching the football.
Did the Eagles have any thoughts of actually bringing Jordan Howard back? He signed with Miami for 2 years, $10 million. Was that ever a thought to actually bring him back? I thought he did a decent job when he was healthy.
They actually would. I was told by team source that they definitely wanted him back, but here's the problem: as we were outlining earlier here, they were not going to pay very much for a veteran backup because they only wanted a 1-year relationship. They only wanted to pay a little bit over $1 million, most $2 million with upside. Jordan Howard got $4.75 million this season. That was a non-starter, so they were not able to offer him anything because he wanted to start. He wasn't going to start here, and he wasn't going to get paid very much if he wanted to stay. So he walked away. By the way, that's got a 1-year structure. Jordan Howard's deal with the Dolphins. He did a good job. They were a great guy, by the way. He turned out. That was a really good trade. Speaking of Bears sources, the Bears were not real happy with him. They thought he got too heavy, but he did a great job for the Eagles. That was one trade that definitely worked out for the Eagles.
It is football for Adam Caplan, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Taking a look at some of the Eagles' offseason stuff that still needs to get done. And I know everybody gets excited about the skill position players, but what are we thinking about the whole Jadeveon Clowney and the Eagles being tied? Is that simply how he always does the due diligence? He always makes the call, so the Eagles are always mentioned when there's a big-name player? Or do they have legitimate interest in that player?
No, I reported on Inside the Birds, the Eagles are not interested in the player. They actually, I didn't even say this on our show because I just forgot. I just forgot about it. I just knew they weren't interested. They actually not talked to the agent or just really did very much work on him because once they knew, they saw the tape because he's out there. But once you find out what a player wants, I don't know how they find this stuff out, but they found out what the player wanted. And other than talking to the agent, I think they had some really good intel. But my understanding is, Mike, that they found out what he wanted, and that was a non-starter, and that was it. So as I noted on our show, unless he's willing to take a 1-year deal at a significantly reduced price, probably under $10 million or no more than $10 million, I don't think they would make a call. And even then, I reported back at the Combine, Mike, that the Eagles were done with injury stuff. They were going to stay out of free agency at receiver. That turned out to be true. In the draft, no injured guys. That turned out to be true. They're done with bringing in guys who've had a significant injury history. They're just not going to do it unless it's so good to pass up. If Devontae Freeman wants to come in at a little bit over $1 million, that might be a different story. But right now, that ain't happening. Right now,
and Adam, I guess you could explain this a little better because you just mentioned it. If Clowney says, "Look, I'll do a 1-year deal. I had the core muscle injury. I'll do a prove it type of deal, which would probably be a long shot." The Eagles have all sorts of cap problems next year.
Yeah, we on Inside the Birds, Jeff and I, we outlined their cap issues next year. And by the way, there's so much out there about how much they might be over the cap. No one knows, so I'm not even going to address the number that's out there. But what I will tell you is this is incredible. 13 players account for $220 million in cap space next year. from multiple league sources who gave me this information. I double-checked it to make sure it was right. They're going to have a cap issue. Now, here's the issue, which we outlined on the show. It was last week's show. You could see the headline on Apple if you're downloading the show. The issue is that they've backloaded so many deals with what's called dummy years, where the player has no base salary, but because of proration, when you restructure a contract, the contract's extended longer, even if there's no money left. That's on, it's on signing bonus proration. Like, you could cut the player, but he's still counting $8 to $10 million against your cap. The problem is they have so many of those players for 21, 22, and 23. It's going to hit them, and they know it. And that's. I do say this with Howie Roseman. He has not hid the fact. If you listen to him in any of his media interviews, he seems to have done like 20 of them in the last couple of months. He hints at it's not about this year; it's about next year with a cap. It's the first time I can remember in Howie's career they actually have a real challenge. It's going to be fascinating.
With these dummy years, what would the first move be for this Eagles team to try and figure this out?
Yeah, so Hunter, first of all, the Jeffrey thing, I'll admit I didn't think that they were going to keep him back in February when it's at the Combine, but I put on our show about 4 weeks ago. I said, Jeff, you're not going to believe this. It's no different when I told you that they actually would have interest in bringing Jason Peters back. I didn't believe it. I just, when I get information, I always double check, and it's true. Barring a miracle, they're not cutting Alshon Jeffrey unless something happens that they're not expecting to do. He's either going to be on the roster, which is highly probable, or they're going to move him. Now, who the heck would want to take his contract? I mean, let's be honest about it. I think I put a bet with Moshe. I think it's 100 to 1. I think I gave him that. It ain't happening. I mean, who the heck who would be dumb enough to take his contract? So it's not going to happen. But I do want to say one thing about Jeffrey's relationship with Wentz from multiple team sources. It's really not bad. I know people have a hard time believing this. I just think that Alshon's just got to be careful. When you talk to people, make sure it's private. Make sure if you're frustrated with something, keep it private. Make sure it doesn't get out of there, and I'll leave it at that.
InsideTheBirds.com. It's Adam Caplan with us here on Football at 4. A lot of you mentioned Peters right there, and obviously there's a lot with this Peters because there's so much. They drafted Dillard. They traded up to get him. Are they going to sit him out for another year? But why doesn't Peters have a deal? What's the deal with that? I mean, I feel like there's so many layers of the onion to this Peters story, and it's almost as if it's just a done deal that Peters is going to come back. And what's his role going to be? Dillard just going to sit again?
So Mike, I'm going to relay a conversation. Okay, I with a team source. I said, tell me something. Who's starting week 1 if Peters comes back? And I could not get a straight answer. So, like you just said, and I said the same thing on our show. How do you sit this day and age a first-round pick that you traded up for? I don't get it. I mean, it's it is a part of it that the owner is friendly with the player, sure, but that's minor compared to the reality. Reality is there's some concerns about him, Andre Dillard. Trust me when I say this. You could take this to the bank and cash the check. If they didn't have concerns about Dillard, Jason Peters is not even being considered coming back. I don't care what anyone says. That's the truth. It's just the fact of the matter is they love the kid's talent, but they don't know that he's ready yet, and that's kind of where it is, Mike. So I would love to give you a definitive answer because if you know my career, it's either this or that. There's no could. It's either this is going to happen or it's not going to happen. Right now, I'm not putting a high percentage of him coming back, but they told Jason and his agent that they're not closing the door, and that's where it is.
So you said you're not putting a high percentage on Peters coming back.
No, I'm not. But I'm not rolling it out because they haven't rolled it out, and that's what I'm told. But I also would add they really want Dillard to start. But and you look, Jason said it before before he left. He said he's not coming back to be a backup, and everyone's just handing him the job if he comes back. But we'll see.
How much of this was we thought we could get Dillard out there in minicamp, training camp, and get him up to speed, but we might not have that, so we feel safer if Peters is here?
There's no way to know that because here's the thing. This is one of the biggest criticisms that Dillard got last season. It's not his fault. Is he simply was not strong enough. The tape showed it. He got bullied when he came in there. There was some time, when he did get a chance to play, there was some really good tape, and there's some tape he'd like to have back, and a lot of it had to do with footwork and matching up the hands and functional strength. You need that full off season to get this corrected. Because once you get tape out there, that's the good thing. Then Stoutland could correct it. Well, you can't correct it if you're not out in the field, and I think that's probably part of it. I I think that's a fair criticism, but we're not going to know for sure because they can't go. Let's say they delay this Peters decision until June 15th. Well, they would have had 15 to 20 practices before then. They could see where Dillard's at physically, where he'd be in their building, they would be with him every day, but they're not. And I think that I would say you're probably right. It plays into it, but there's no way to put a percentage on that. And this is something we've never dealt with in the history of the National Football League. Even in the lockout in 2011, talking to coaches, and I think they're doing some of that now, they're trusting the players that are getting into shape. And remember in 2011, Mike, you were not allowed to talk to players. You couldn't give them a rule book. You couldn't give them your playbook until the end of the lockout in mid-July.
Is it weird that Jason Peters isn't signed yet? I feel like we're spoiled here in Philly with left tackle, so fans assume after a false start or 2 false starts that he can no longer play. But, he had a decent season last year. Is it weird that he hasn't really been signed?
I talked to the Browns, Hunter, about this. Their whole thing for the draft was that they were wide open at left tackle. It was a problem for them. They missed badly on it last season, and they wanted it solved, and they were going to draft someone with their first-round pick, and they did. They got a left tackle. I don't see him going there. He's not going to start if he went there. Jason wants to start somewhere. So, and also he wants to get money. See, here's the thing that agents tell me and clubs tell me as well. Once you get to the draft and through the draft, the leverage almost always is with the club. This is why you're seeing Clowney not get the kind of deal that he wants. I gave you kind of the Eagles' thoughts on a running back, whether it's Hyde or Freeman or somebody else. They have a number in mind, and they're not going to move on. Talking to the Jets. They've got a number in mind for Logan Ryan and these other players. They're not moving on it. They're in on Clowney, but they have a number. As one personnel guy told me this week, guys, it's not what you think you're worth. It's what clubs are willing to pay, and that's exactly where these situations are with so many of these veteran free agents.
All right, Football at 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Adam Caplan, we'll leave you with this, as you just mentioned, what these guys want to get. Running back, LaShawn McCoy, a name you mentioned, he said he could see myself. I could see myself there in Philly. Is that just guys who play in Philly always like to come back to Philly, or do they have, hey, LaShawn, keep your phone next to you because if we can't find anybody, we're interested?
If they would have drafted, Mike, a running back in the second, third round, they would not be signing a veteran free agent, as I understand it. They didn't get that solved. You can't solve every issue in one offseason, which is I've learned. So they've left the door open to bring in a veteran, and Shady, I'm told, is on their list. My sense is, based on the information I've been given, that he's down on their list. But if they can't get those other 2 veterans, I think Shady's an option. In fact, I know he's an option because I reported about a month and a half ago that he's on their list. But the other thing is, one team source said to me, don't forget, special teams is also important. Shady does not play special teams, so I think that's part of it. And he's older than the other 2 backs, and he clearly lost a step last season, so we'll see what happens there.
It's Football 4, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. Adam Caplan with us today at Caplan NFL. Tomorrow, Andrew DeCecco is in. Monday, Jeff Mosher, as we continue with Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash, powered by InsideTheBirds.com. All right, Adam, thanks, pal.
Guys, thank you.
Looking forward to that. That was excellent stuff. We really dove into some of the Eagles' offseason still-to-do list, and that running back conversation, the Jason Peters stuff, Hunter, I think you're in a point here where the Jason Peters stuff, he said if they didn't have concerns about Dillard, there's no way there'd be rumors of Jason Peters coming back. So I guess that's something to keep your eye on.